Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Toni and I'm a homeschooling mom to 4 kids. And we're talking today all about how I schedule my day with 4 kids, 4 different ages, 4 different grades, and how I set this up. There's so many times that I look on YouTube and I've seen moms talk about how they set up their school day, but it's really hard to visualize how this really works. Maybe they might use their names and you're not really sure what age they are or what grade they are. I'm gonna try to make this as clear and concise and obvious as I can. I've got it all written out on the board behind me. I'm gonna show you guys how we set up our day, who I work with first, who I work with second, and what these kids are doing when this kid is working with me and all this stuff, just to give you an idea of how it works for our family. This might be something that'll help you guys if you are homeschooling multiple kids. If you want to find out how I set up my school day, exactly step by step how we do it, then stay tuned. Okay, so I have this all written out. I tried to make this as obvious as I can. We've been homeschooling for over 7 years now, and I have changed our schedule around many times as the need arises. There are times when our kids have worked more independently, and there's times where we've done more combined group subjects, and it changes every single year. This is what's working with us right now. So first thing I wrote out, just to make this really clear for you guys, is the morning subjects, the group subjects for the most part. Then I'm going to talk about the individual subjects. So I did this on the board because, you know, our kids learn when we put stuff on the board. So we're going to do it old school. And I'm just going to show you here on the boards. If you go across the top here, you can see that I have, so that I could just make it very clear what kid and what grade I'm talking about. I just have their grades up here. So I've got my kindergartner, my 3rd grader, my 5th grader, and my 7th grader, okay? So they go across, and then I'm marking down here so that you can see what each child is doing. So this is the order of how we start our day. So first thing we do, a lot of people call it morning basket time. This is just our group subjects, whatever you want to call it. So the first thing that we do together as a family is Bible. We've got Bible time where sometimes they have their individual Bible study, and there's alternate days where we actually do a Bible study together. So I'm just lumping this together with Bible time. So we've got Bible time. We've got scripture memory. I have a scripture box that we all work on, and we talk about the scripture together, and we review our scripture verses and things like that together. And then pray. That is a new thing that I have actually recently written in my schedule, because, which might sound crazy, but there's times, so many times, where I pray to start our day, or have one of them pray to start our day, but we're just praying for the day. Lord, let our day go good. Please help everybody have good attitudes, you know, stuff like that. But we're not actually taking that time to pray for others. And this was kind of a, you know, a thing that I wanted to think of, especially in the season that we're in right now, praying for other people. So we have started, we do our Bible time, we do our scripture time, and then we do our prayer time, where me and each of my girls thinks of someone that we need to pray for, someone in our church, someone that we know. Somebody always needs prayer. So the X means they're working with me. If you see an X, that means it's kid and mom, okay? As you can see, my kindergartner, he's not working with us at this point. It's complete reality. He doesn't sit with us right now. Now, I do his own Bible time. If they're doing their Bible study where they go to their room and do it on their own, then I sit with him and do it on his own. But the times when we do it together, he's usually in the other room. So we've got Bible, scripture, and prayer. I'm working with my 3rd grader, my 5th grader, and my 7th grader all together, okay? So that's the first thing we do. When we're done with all that, the second thing we're gonna do is history or science. So we've got history 3 days a week, science 2 days a week. So we're either doing one or the other. History especially, we're doing all together. So my 3rd, 5th, and 7th, and me, you can notice he is still doing his own thing right now. But 3rd, 5th, and 7th, they're all working with me. Then the only difference is when we come down to science, I'm gonna put a little X here just to show you for science. Science, I'm doing with my 3rd and my 5th grader, and I would like for him to join in. It's a struggle. He's a boy and he really has no interest, but I would like for him, I at least try to have him in the room while we're reading our science stuff. So for science, these 3, or especially these 2, will be working with me. I put an I for independent. For science, she does her own science. So she's working on that on her own when we're doing science together. Okay, everybody good? We following me so far? The next thing we have, once we're done with history and science, is electives. 3 main things that we're doing for our electives right now is Spanish, geography flashcards, and health. So we do one of those 3 things every single day. We do geography and Spanish every single day except for Thursday. Thursday we do health. But it's going to be something in here in these electives. I would love for him to join again, but it's not happening right now. So I'm just being totally honest. So I would love to have a little X here, and that's the goal. So for all of our elective time, that is all of us, my 3 girls together. We've got 3rd, 5th, and 7th, all of them working with me together. That is all the lump of together subjects, group subjects that we do in the morning. Now, the next thing, this is when we start branching off into independent subjects. So the next thing we have is writing. I have started having them just do journal entry, writing entries where I will give them a topic, I write it on the board, and they work on that. So they've got a good, maybe 20 minutes, half hour or so to work on that. So the 3rd, 5th, and 7th grader, they're all working on their writing independently. This is when this little guy, my kindergartner, is gonna sit and work with me. I have heard from so many moms over the years that you need to fill their cup first, and that is what I'm trying to do. Now, I do try to do his Bible first on those days where I do Bible time with him, but then he's kind of on his own for a little bit. But then right here, it's gonna be me and him, and we try to do his kindergarten together. That is him with me, that's my kindergartner with me while they're doing their writing assignment. So now I'm gonna clean off the board, and I'm gonna show you how we balance and switch around all of our other individual subjects for the rest of the day. Okay, I've got all this written out. Now I'm gonna kind of fill in the blanks as we go so it makes more sense as I explain it. So these are all the individual subjects. We've got math, spelling, language, reading, and handwriting. Those are all kind of the things that we would have left for the rest of the day. So first thing we start with is math. Now, what I've started doing recently, which is I think an amazing lifesaver, it does take a little bit of juggling, but it typically works better. Our math is very independent. We use Christian Light Education math. I will link that up above if you want to check out my reviews on Christian Light Education. It's really awesome, but it's very independent. But I have discovered that it does help my kids, even though they could just read the lesson themselves and then do the work themselves, they tend to do better when I sit and explain the new concept and then they continue their lesson. Now we're talking 5 or 10 minutes, maybe, sometimes less than that. So what I do is I might work with my 7th grader on her math for the first maybe 10 minutes of math time, while my other 2, my 5th grader and my 3rd grader, will work on their spelling. Then when I'm done with her, I will take, whether they're done with spelling or not, I will take one of them. Then she is gonna work independently on her math and she's gonna finish it. While let's say this one's done next. So while I take her and work with her on math, okay? So she's done with spelling. Once these 2 have already been taught their beginning math lesson, they're gonna keep working. Then I'm gonna sit and I'm gonna maybe work with this one on her math lesson. So we just kind of ease into it so everybody gets that 10 minutes of the beginning of the math lesson with mom while they finish their spelling. So the spelling has all been done independently. If they were not able to finish their spelling before I called them up here, like this one, if I started with her, then when she's done, she's gonna go ahead and work on her spelling. So they just keep working and they know the spelling is what they work with next. You have to juggle it a little bit when it comes to Friday and it's time to do the spelling test, and they may have to wait a little bit if I'm working with somebody, and then we kind of squeeze it in where we can. So that's how I would work with the math lesson. Now, we move down here to language. This is another one of those where for the most part, I would say 95% of the time, she can work completely independently on language. We use the good and the beautiful for language. Sometimes there is something in the beginning where I dictate a couple sentences to her and she has to write them down, or there's something that we just have to talk over or something like that. We might do that in the beginning real quick, but for the most part, she does that on her own. These 2 need me for that. So she can be working on this. These 2, I have to alternate and work with one or work with the other. So what I do sometimes, if you use the good and the beautiful, I don't know if this would work for you, but this does work for us. There's times where I will start the lesson with this daughter, with a 5th grader, while this one does her independent practice, because in the book it'll have the time that you work with the teacher in the beginning where I teach the new concept, then there's independent practice at the end. For the most part, it's review that you've already worked in the book. So she can go ahead and do her independent practice while I'm doing the lesson part with her. Then when I'm done teaching her, I will switch over here and we'll work together for the teacher part. So all of them have been helped for the teacher part while the other one is doing the independent practice, okay? Does that make sense so far? Okay, so the next 2 things are pretty easy. Handwriting is one of those that we just squeeze in when they're not working with me for something else. So reading, this is one thing. We use Christian Light Education for reading. I love, love, love their reading program. But every other day, I think for every single kid, every other day is oral reading. So I try to at least have 2 of them swapping because they have to then read with me. So if all 3 need mom to do oral reading, then that makes it kind of complicated. So let's say this time I'm going to start with this one. So I'm going to be doing oral reading with her, while this one, let's say she doesn't have oral reading with me today. So she's completely on her own. And then this one, let's say she has oral reading that day, then she's going to go ahead and start with her handwriting. So she can do her handwriting independently. These 2 are both working on reading. Oh, she wouldn't have an X. My bad. She would be doing reading independently. She would be doing handwriting independently, and I would be doing oral reading with her. Once the oral reading is done, she would switch over and do the independent reading. That's when this one would come up with me, and we would do the oral reading together. Then this one is going to go ahead and finish her lesson with, she's going to do her independent reading lesson, and then she's going to switch over to handwriting. This one can switch over to handwriting. Now, the other thing that I hold on to, why I only give them like 20 minutes for their writing assignment, if they finish and they need me for something or they're just done, there's 2 other things that are super easy to just squeeze in there if they're waiting for me. And one is to read for 20 minutes, because I always have them read for 20 minutes. That is an independent thing that they can switch in any of these little sections. So if they're waiting for me for language and it's just not working out that day, I say, go read for 20 minutes. And they go grab my phone and set a timer, and they go read for 20 minutes. It's usually not like a fun book that they just chose for themselves. It's something that I have assigned, whether it's from our bookshelves, just a good literature that I want them to read, or a lot of times it has to do with history. That's something they could do anytime. And then the other thing, if they did not finish their journal entry from earlier, that's another thing that they can work on independently. So we kind of just swap back and forth. Now, if there is a time where in reality somebody struggled with math, let's say they got a bunch of stuff wrong yesterday and we need to sit and they need an extra 20 minutes on math, that's when some of these other subjects are going to come in, the handwriting or the reading or the journal entry or something like that. Some of those will then come into play if I am taking extra long with somebody else, or if maybe a story in their reading and the Christian Light reading takes a little bit longer. Sometimes you've got a 4-page story, sometimes you've got a 6-page story. So it just depends. If one of those is taking a little bit longer, they'll finish this stuff. If they finish everything, a lot of times that's when I say, hey, go play with Jonah. That's when he is just playing. He's a lot of times in the room with us doing magnet tiles or building something or playing with cars or whatever. Sometimes he sits at the table and colors with us. So he's not like completely off on his own, but once he's done his lesson, I usually try to get him something to do that's somewhat productive, that's not in front of the screen. We do use the tablet times when I really need him to be out of the room, especially like if I'm trying to read aloud to them and he is noisy. But this is kind of how we set up our day. It's really not that complicated. I have a video where I talked about these little notebooks that I have for each of my girls, where I just print out a checklist for them and they check off everything that they've done throughout the day. They're not done until everything has been checked off. So each of them have one of these. I have my planner where I have everything written down and I check everything off too. So I make sure I'm doing a lot of checklists because I want to make sure we don't forget stuff. It's really easy to forget and be like, oh my goodness, nobody did spelling today. But if I have it written down, that really helps. But this is not necessarily in order of how we do things. This is the order of how we do things. So they check it off as they go because they can do it out of order if they need to. And so it's nice to have that flexibility, but I also have the structure that I need to make sure we get everything done. The read alouds, I did not write that separately because typically our read aloud I do in our history time. So I read aloud from our history book, and then I have 2 different books that we're reading out loud right now. And I just do that right after history while we're sitting together in the living room already, and they'll play with like slime or like kinetic sand, or they're playing with a bubble popper poppet thing or something like that. Anyway, that is when everybody's kind of sitting around doing that. So I don't keep that, that's not a separate thing because I do that in that morning chunk time. But this is how we set up our day. I hope this was helpful for you guys. This is just how we do it. This has definitely been a big help for me to keep us organized and make sure we're not missing subjects and make sure I don't have kids that are just sitting there waiting, because you don't want anybody just waiting, because then your day just gets longer and longer when they're waiting for you. You got to sit down and really think about what's going to work for you and write it out. I hope this was helpful. If you guys liked this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you have any questions, make sure you leave those in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe if you're not yet subscribed to my channel. If you want to hear about homeschool life, mom life, and thrifty life, we keep it real and we keep it simple, and that's what we do here at Our Thrifty Homeschool. So we'd love to have you if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel. Okay, thanks so much for watching, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.